Okay, girls, we're going to pick up with who is in Congress. This is an additional um, podcast that will add additional information to the two original podcasts that are already loaded on your Edline. I went through the general makeup of Congress. All right. Um, as you move into, all right, and really this is the typical list. All right, typically they're Protestant, they're male, okay, um, they're lawyers or have something to do with the law. We have seen some change in that area, but they have a great diversity of views. Keep in mind that not until 1950s was Congress a career. At that time, they tried to impose term limits, but the Supreme Court struck it down. As you move into the 1970s, the 1980s, we're going to see three reasons that the number of new members rose sharply during that time period. Okay. In the 19th century, people served and then they went back to life as usual. But as you moved into the 20th century, and especially in the latter part of the 20th century, okay, you're going to find three reasons why, as I just said previously, that the number of new members rose sharply. One, when congressional district lines were redrawn, incumbents sometimes couldn't carry their districts. Two, political scandals made voters want fresh faces. Okay, and three, the Republican victory in '94 in Congress brought new faces to the Capitol. Okay, incumbents still enjoy election advantages, and most House members still win big in their districts. There are two types of districts that we need to look at. One is the marginal district, all right, where the winner gets less than 55% of the vote, districts that have very close elections, and the safe district where the incumbents win by wide margins. The winner gets 55% or greater than 55% of the vote. There are many reasons why congressional seats have become safer. Okay. First, visibility. Okay. Incumbents can afford more. All right. They can use more money for their campaign. Okay. Especially with TV, with television, and other media. Two, incumbents have free mailings. They have the franking privilege. Keep that in mind. Voters are more likely, number three, to vote for the person rather than the party. The name is familiarity of names. Three, voters are more likely to have heard of an incumbent, read about them. And four, they use their power to get programs passed that benefit their districts, especially when we get close to the election time period will you see that happen. Now on to parties. We do have Democratic domination of Congress, all right, for quite some time, all right. 1994 was the Republican Revolution, but the Republicans lost again in 2006 because of being disenchanted with the Bush administration, and the Republicans will lose again in 2008. Okay, but once again, once you hit 2010, you realize that the Democrats will hold on to the Senate, but the Republicans take the House and continue to hold the majority in the House by a small margin. Okay, there are many different explanations as to why Democrats have dominated Congress. First of all, the gap between votes and seats occurred because Democrats controlled state legislatures had redrawn the congressional district maps in ways that make it harder for Republicans to win House seats. We see that happening in the House Republican state districts also, where it makes it harder for the Democrats to control seats. But there was domination more for the Democrats. Democrats do well in low turnout districts, inner cities, while Republicans do well in high turnout districts, white suburbs. So you also have the incumbent advantage, remember. Democrats generally have fielded better in terms of selling themselves and street smarts. More experienced candidates have more closely reflected voters' policy preferences and have been able to fashion winning coalitions from labor parties, feminists, environmentalists, etc. for support. There are several reasons why the Democratic domination ended in 1994. Incumbency advantages became disadvantages. People were fed up with the mess in Washington. Respect for Congress plummeted. Redistricting after the 1990 census. And the shift of the South to the Republican Party, where it had been a solid Democratic South for quite some time. Okay? You also had the conservative coalition formed when Southern Democrats voted with Republicans in the House and the Senate. The conservative coalition, made a significant difference. The next part deals with, members representing voters. Okay. I want to make one more comment about the redistricting. In 2006, both parties won about the same share of House seats as their percentage of the vote. Okay. One thing you're noticing now is Congress being more partisan. There's more party unity in voting that we didn't see probably from the time of pre-Reagan. Okay? All right. Do members represent their voters? It's often uncertain whether or not members are devoted to their constituents. 3 theories how members behave. The first one is the representational theory. Okay? Members vote to please their constituents, mainly because they want to be reelected. There are really 3 theories of representation. There's the trustee theory, which is they represent their constituents using their own best judgment. There's the delegate theory, where the representatives vote the way their constituents want them. I believe your book calls it organizational, where the members please their colleagues to get things done and acquire approval. You may also see it called delegate. The third one is the attitudinal, or the politico. Sometimes you'll see it called the politico, where they vote on their own beliefs. They act as trustees or delegates depending on the issue, and they look at their own beliefs. And we'll take each one here separately. The question of representation is very complex. Can a man represent a woman? Can a white person adequately represent the views of a black person? There are many such questions and no easy answers. Obviously, people bring to DC their beliefs, culture, and experiences. So diversity in Congress should lead to differences over time in legislation, but it's unclear exactly what the effects are. Okay, so the discussion issue really is, how can Congress represent me when it doesn't look like me or sound like me? Okay, so let's look at the representational view. Studies show positive correlations between congressional votes, okay, and constituencies on social welfare and civil rights issues, but not as much on foreign policy issues, because foreign policy is generally remote from a person's daily life and opinions regarding it can change rapidly. We find that if members get strong views from the constituency, they'll vote that way. If conflicting, they may not vote at all. They may abstain. Constituency influences are an important factor in the Senate, but no comparable study has been done for the House. There are as many independent-minded members of Congress from safe districts as from marginal districts. Okay? What if your people and you and your party don't click? Okay? The problem with that is that you may not know really what your people want. Influence of constituents comes from the fact that legislators want to be reelected. So it's really important that you be aware, okay, of what your constituents want. And how do you win votes, really? Okay, well, you win votes typically, we'll need to go back to that one, by doing services for constituents or by appealing to the party itself, party loyalty. The next one is organizational. And sometimes you ask yourself the question, what if your conscience tells you differently? Okay? What if the way you vote causes a rise in your party or a decrease in your party? If constituency interests or opinions aren't at stake, members are influenced by their party colleagues and committees. Many members do this when they're unsure of the stakes at risk. The next one is the attitudinal view. This is the third one, where you can say, okay, my conscience is clear, or I feel it's a mundane issue, okay? And I have to ask the question, will the people reelect me if I vote according to the attitudinal view? Or what's the party going to think of me if I vote according to the attitudinal view? House members have opinions closer to those of the general public than senators do. Two senators from the same state may have opposing views. Three phases of the Senate you need to look at. In the 1950s and 60s, the Senate typically was cautious, conservative, dominated by Southern senators, the Millionaire Club. Mid-60s, decentralization gave more power to individual senators. Liberal senators rose steadily in number because of the Johnson reforms of the 1960s. All right, remember the Great Society. Late 70s and 80s, liberals lost to conservative Republicans. Conservatism was based on ideology, and the conservative coalition grew, especially after Phyllis Schlafly and the feminist movement, after she attacked the feminist movement. The next section deals with ideology and civility in Congress. Okay? All right, what we're seeing, and I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm going to go to another part because I'm already at, about 14 minutes, and I have to do these in 15-minute segments. So we'll look for part 2, 2014.